Central America. In a fertile valley between the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, in what is now Honduras, lie the monumental ruins of Copan. This archaeological site is believed to have been the cultural and political center of the once mighty Maya civilization that thrived between 2000 BC and 800 AD.
People have called Copan the Paris of Mesoamerica because it was such a place for the arts and humanities. The sculpture is beautiful. The architecture is just magnificent.
It is believed that at one time, Copan was inhabited by as many as 20,000 people and covered an area of 10 square miles. But in the 9th century, this incredible Mayan city was abandoned and its people vanished. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they found only a few farming hamlets. But why?
They decimated their environment. Warfare became endemic. And it ended. And people left. They walked away.
To some extent, the idea that the Mayans became a lost culture is a yes and a no. We know that they stopped building, but at the very heart of the Mayan is a belief, it's a religion, which continues to beat until this very day, saying, please pay attention to us because we have this vast body of knowledge we want to share with the world.
At Copan, the Maya had built a complex of monuments, temples, and plazas, as well as sculptured stone pillars depicting ancient kings. The Maya were also one of the earliest ancient civilizations to create a written language.
In the last 20, 30 years, there's been a huge advance in decoding of their hieroglyphs. This is something that's happened in our generation. It's still ongoing.
Might a closer look at the Mayan stone carvings and their hieroglyphs provide proof of contact with extraterrestrials at Copan? According to ancient astronaut theorists, the answer is yes.
Some of the large statues at Copan are infinitely fascinating to me because the gear that they're wearing is very reminiscent of something technological. One of the figures has a box with tubes coming out and buttons and just very weird things. These statues look like some type of a being wearing an astronaut suit. And in my opinion, that means that we were visited by some type of extraterrestrials who were very similar in appearance to us. Because according to the ancient texts, we were created in their image.
Researchers working in Copan have also found stone sculptures called stela, which have provoked controversy since the site was discovered in 1576. And various interpretations of the carvings suggest the Maya may have had knowledge of a world far beyond their own continent.
This is one of the curious dragon sculptures here at Copan, of which there are many. In fact, these very oriental statues would look right at place in China or some other oriental country. Some archaeologists believe that there are elephants on either side of this Copan ruler. So why would there be here at Copan such Asian motifs as elephants and dragons in a place in Central America that is so far away from China and Southeast Asia? Is there some kind of extraterrestrial connection between the Mayans and the Chinese, and an origin for both that comes from the stars?
How could the early Maya of Central America have had knowledge possessed by people living in Asia, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean?
One of the basic premises of the ancient astronaut theory suggests that there was contact between ancient cultures way before we give them credit. These ancient cultures were in fact connected by flying machines. And those flying machines were usually operated by extraterrestrials.
In the Mexican state of the Yucatan lie the ruins of the ancient Mayan city of Chichen Itza. Here, in the 10th century, the Maya built what has become known as the El Caracol Observatory.
It has 4 doors on the bottom that can be used as observation points, and it had a number of windows up on top. But most of those have fallen. We only have 2.5 of those left. But looking at those, we can see that they're definitely looking at the sun, probably at the moon. There are hints that they could have been using them for stars and planets.
They were tracking in particular Venus, the phases of the moon, eclipses. We know that because we have books that record these things.
Most researchers agree that from 250 to 900 AD, the Mayans were the most advanced astronomers of their time. But why were they observing the cosmos so intently? And what might they have been looking for?
The Maya were very sophisticated in terms of what they watched in the heavens and in the calendars that they kept track of. The ability to understand that Venus as morning star and Venus as evening star are the same star was very rarely done in the history of humankind. They were oftentimes seen as 2 different entities. The idea that they could predict the cycles of the heavens reflects their sophistication.
The Maya were one of the only ancient people that invented a mathematical system that we use, which is called place value and zero. And using place value and zero allows you to make enormous calculations, numbers that are very, very large. They could probably calculate things thousands of years into the past.
Did the Maya develop such mastery of astronomy and mathematics on their own? Or is it possible, as ancient astronaut theorists believe, that the elite rulers of the Maya had received help from star travelers?
The Maya, for example, had the knowledge of the planet Venus surrounding our solar system in such a precise way that within 6,000 years, the difference was a few hours. Now, the Mayas itself did not live for 6,000 years. So they had no time, 6,000 years, to observe if their calculation concerning the Venus rotation is correct or not, because they had their information from their gods.
The Mayans could not possibly have developed these systems on their own because it takes thousands, some of them tens of thousands of years of observation. So it is clear that they were given to them by aliens out there who have made contact with Mayan people.
Perhaps the most intriguing astronomical accomplishment of the Maya concerns their understanding of the slow change in the Earth's rotational axis in space. Called precession, it's a process that takes more than 26,000 years to complete. But how could the Maya have tracked events over such an extreme time span? Is it possible that, like modern scientists, the Maya had been using knowledge of the Earth's movement in space to track time? And if so, for what purpose?
The Maya developed these time-keeping skills by monitoring the movements and predicting the movements of not just the sun, but the moon, Venus, in some cases Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, some other constellations.
Though most people consider the Egyptians as the ultimate pyramid builders, 10 times as many pyramids were constructed in Mesoamerica than in Egypt. But why did the Maya build so many of their monumental structures in absolute precise alignment with solar, lunar, and stellar events?
Well, it seems as if they were paranoid that if they did not do this, something bad would happen. They were on the 5th epoch, and each of these earlier epochs they believed had ended in catastrophe. And it seemed as if they had to synchronize their rituals, their events, their games, their activities with these specific celestial events, because if they didn't, something bad would happen and the epoch would end prematurely.
Mayans were absolutely convinced that timing was crucial because the stars were revealing when the gods were going to come back. And obviously that meant the gods were coming from the stars.
Chihuahua, Mexico, April 2000. Miners excavating 1,000 feet below the mineral-rich town of Nica drill through a cave wall and make a stunning discovery. A glittering cavern full of giant crystals that are 500,000 years old.
The Cuevas de Cristales, or the Crystal Cave of northern Mexico, is a very unique site. And we're talking crystals as big around as a car that stretch from the floor to the ceiling of the cavern. It's a remarkable thing to see.
The incredible cave of the crystals in Mexico was just accidentally found. And the discoverers were completely astounded with these giant gypsum crystals. It's fantastic. And it reminds a person of the Fortress of Solitude of Superman, where all this information is encoded into these giant crystals.
Now, the significance of this is extremely important to the indigenous people of northern Mexico, in fact, all of Mesoamerica, in that the crystals themselves were considered sacred. They vibrated, and they believed there was also some properties involved in crystals that would provide them a way to communicate with the gods.
Many ancient myths tell us that there are magical apparatus that are made out of rock or stone or crystal.
If we look at the properties of many of the caverns and caves, we see that there's usually some type of lining of crystal or quartz. And we know that crystal has a vast ability to store information. Maybe some of these caves are actually storing information, and that ancient people who meditate in caverns are tapping into this knowledge.
Might caves that are rich in quartz or crystal really possess some special power that our ancestors were aware of. Ancient astronaut theorists point out that the scientists today are discovering that crystals do, in fact, have very unique properties.
Quartz and other crystalline structures oscillate at incredibly well-defined frequencies when you hit them mechanically, and they can be activated electrically through an effect known as the piezoelectric effect. So you can put quartz in a watch and use it as a very accurate time-keeping device. So quartz could be used in conducting or communicating certain signals.
In the Silicon Valley of California, quartz is used to manufacture the small integrated circuits found in computers because of its strong semiconducting properties. Computer chips are also made with the form of the mineral quartzite, which is a highly condensed form of quartz. Today, computer engineers are working on how to physically manipulate crystals so that digital data can be stored inside them forever. The media has dubbed these hard drives of the future Superman memory crystals.
So Superman is one of our superheroes who came from outer space. He came from the planet Krypton. It was in the process of being destroyed, so his parents saved him and sent him in a spaceship to our planet. One of the interesting things in the Superman story is that his father was able to program a crystal that traveled with him that he was able to use to construct the Fortress of Solitude from. And it was basically a crystal structure, essentially a cave, where he could both get away from things and he could use the crystals in there to get information. So one of the things that's interesting in the Fortress of Solitude is the way that the quartz technology or the crystal technology seems to be underlying everything. And so a future that we're looking at is using light in computing. You have to figure out ways to trap light and to store it, basically to create bits on and off and have the light last long enough that the signal stays there and the memory is stored.
Was the power of crystals something the ancients not only knew about, but utilized by building structures that would harness and transmit it?
A lot of the pyramids had either granite or some type of crystal-lined surface. For instance, Giza, those great pyramids, were topped with an obelisk made of shiny granite crystal. And when we look at an obelisk, it very much resembles some type of power rod, maybe a Tesla coil. Ancient times, the obelisk was always a symbol of power. Maybe this wasn't just emotional power, but actual physical power that was being harnessed by these objects.
Crystals are transformers. They hold energy. And indeed, caves are thought of as hotspots where you have Earth energy emerging from the planet.
Chicago, Illinois. Housed here in the Newberry Library is the Mayan manuscript known as the Popol Vuh. Literally translated as the Book of the People, it is a collection of Maya oral histories passed on through the ages. Written in the mid-16th century, this incredible book encompasses a range of subjects, including those involving Mayan creation myths.
The Popol Vuh talks about the creation of the universe. It talks about the fact that in the beginning all was darkness, there was a primordial sea. And then these creators, male and female, spoke the word. And with the word, the earth was created and animals were created.
It's sort of like the combination of the book of Genesis and the book of Chronicles in the Bible. It's a story of battles between the gods, and then it connects the creation of the world with the present day through the kings of the Quiche. It's really the only complete Maya creation myth that we have.
What they were saying was that a framework was created, that certain deities manifested themselves physically and made decisions as to what was going to happen. In the case of the Mayans, this was a choice as to where the Mayans were going to live, as well as the selection of certain sacred sites.
Throughout the ancient world, there have been numerous similar myths of otherworldly beings coming to Earth and interacting with some of the earliest humans. Most mainstream historians believe these stories represent only religious and spiritual beliefs. But is it possible, as ancient astronaut theorists believe, that the Popol Vuh, as well as other ancient creation tales, represents actual evidence of contact with extraterrestrials in the distant past? According to the translations of hieroglyphs found at numerous ancient Mayan cities, Kukulkan, or the Great Feathered Serpent, was the god who brought knowledge to the Maya.
When we talk about the Mayan gods, we know that the most important god to them was the plumed serpent, or Kukulkan. We see his image all across the Mayan world. We see it on great carved images on stone. Kukulkan is often depicted as a plumed serpent. Some would say a dragon or a snake with wings. That leads some to believe that Kukulkan may have descended from the sky.
Now the Maya were living in the jungle. The Maya knew that the snake could not fly, but this snake, this serpent, could fly. The oldest Maya histories tell that Kukulkan was the teacher of young Maya, he had chosen 8 boys in the age between 7 and 12, and he taught these 8 boys in mathematics, in astronomy, in all kind of science. And later, Kukulkan disappeared with the promise that he will return in a faraway future. These boys have become the first priests and the first teachers again for the Maya.
Some of the legends state that he appeared along the Gulf Coast on a raft of serpents, and he spread his high knowledge through that part of the country. And even today, in some of the Mayan cultures, he's revered as this great god that brought all these teachings and civilization to their part of the world. And yet no one knows who he was or where he came from.
Strangely, depictions of a winged serpent god can be found all around the ancient world. In India, the epic text, the Mahabharata, details the ancient account of sky beings, known as Nagas. Dating as far back as 2500 BC, the half-human and half-serpent entities look nearly identical to the Mayan Kukulkan. And ancient Chinese mythology from the 5th millennium BC describe flying dragons that are eerily similar to the serpent god depicted in Mesoamerica.
To the peoples that preceded the Inca in Peru, similar ideas were put upon characters like Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, who was this wisdom bringer, sometimes said to have come down from the sky world, and once again bringing the rudiments of civilization to the peoples of Central America.
There is a common thread among many ancient cultures of the Americas when it comes to plumed serpent god. The Cherokee, for example, believe that time, their calendar, is based upon a rattlesnake that they can see in the night sky, perhaps a constellation. So the idea of a serpent or a snake or a dragon is common among many ancient cultures, and not just the Maya or the Mesoamericans.
The snake is the giver of wisdom in so many cultures, and it gives the tools of civilization, working with metals, working with other instruments, certain knowledge, certain aspects of life, and that it really gives this knowledge to certain people, and that he places these people in a position whereby, from their social position, they are able to give this to the rest of their culture.
All these cultures were far apart from each other, sometimes by thousands and thousands of miles. So how is it possible that all these societies came up with not similar, but identical stories? Was it really flying snakes or gods that were snakes? Of course not. It was misunderstood technology. Some types of vehicles were witnessed that descended from the sky, out of which people came, astronauts, that instructed people of different cultures and different societies in certain scientific disciplines. This is not coincidence. This is evidence for ancient alien encounters in the remote past. There is no other way.